First taught, like you guys, DTS Outreach. So what you do, share your testimony, have an opportunity to preach in a church, something like that. And so teaching with a translator. And then the first school, right after DTS, the first school that I led, we went to Burma and Thailand on outreach. And so got to teach a lot more in Burma. We just taught solidly. And then it's probably, so in the last 10 years, I've taught Asia, Africa, Europe, Oceania, a lot of different places with a lot of different translation. And I've seen the influence and the impact of quality translation, and then the influence and impact of poor translation. And working with a translator can be funny, it can be exciting, and it can also be really frustrating. And it can bring out a lot of kind of, why is this happening? This isn't how I pictured my teaching going this morning. This isn't, I have either way too much material or not enough material, or I'm having to explain every little thing, or there's all sorts of frustrations that can come up. And so my hope this morning is that we're going to look at, there's 22 different principles that I've learned, that I've seen, that I've experienced, that are going to help you in being better at teaching with a translator. And so a lot of them are based on frustrations of my own, and so they're to help you not be frustrated in teaching with a translator in the future. But it's going to be something that is rewarding. That's my heart and my hope, is that teaching with a translator becomes something that you think, man, I nailed that. Rather than, man, in English I nailed that, but in the local language I don't know if I got that message across or not. And you know, some of the funny things that can happen. I was teaching in Cambodia one time, and I had the pastor of the church, so I'm at the front in Cambodia, pastor of the church, teaching, and then every 15 or 20 minutes his cell phone would ring, and he would say, "Ooh, stop. Yeah." And he would go over and he would answer his phone over the side here, and then, okay. And then we would keep teaching. I was teaching Ephesians, and it took forever. And I had to cut out a whole bunch of material because we only had a certain amount of time, but every 15 or 20 minutes there was a phone call over the side. And so, you know, for him, he hadn't really taught as a translator. And so that was, you know, it's like, ooh, well, I'm here as a guest speaker. I can't admonish the pastor of the church for talking on his phone, so you just go, okay, I gotta learn to deal with this. So what sort of things can I do that are going to help me in advance with my teaching through a translator? So these 22 principles are they're not rules. They're just, this is stuff that I have learned. That's my hope, my prayer is that it's going to help you. So the first one is get to know your translator. It's good to start spending time with your translator. And it's going to help you pick up culture and local customs and things that you can actually put into your teaching. You get the mindset of what's going on. It helps give you a pulse of what's happening with your students. And you know, your translator, they're a person, not a machine. So get to know the person. Ask them questions. Get to know them. We were teaching in a place called Poi Pet. It's on the Cambodia-Thailand border. And we had a translator named Bona that came and lived with us for a week as we were translating. And at the end of the week, I felt like, one, I knew him so much more. And two, that I knew how to approach the people that we were teaching in this church. Because we would just sit and ask him questions. And he would tell us about himself and how he grew up, and you start to realize, man, I was going to use that illustration, I was going to teach that certain thing, and people have no context for that. You know, it's, I don't know if you've ever been on outreach and somebody shares a story, and this is one for India. You go to India, and people will share a story about, yeah, when I was growing up, and then I had this relationship with this girl or this guy, and then it didn't work out, and then, you know, and then God taught me so much through it, and now I'm so much stronger. I mean, how many of you have heard a testimony, something along those lines, in the Western world? In India, it doesn't work because everybody has arranged marriages. So I have a friend in India who says, yeah, anytime a Western outreach team comes and they start to preach the relationship story, he goes, I just preach the gospel. I just literally I ignore what they're saying and I preach the gospel. And he goes, and I've heard it so many times, I know when they're wrapping up. I know when they're getting to the, and then Jesus changed my life part of the story. And so then, he hammers home the gospel. But that's, for a teacher, that's a misunderstanding of the culture, what's going on. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's so important that we get to know our translator. What are some of the things that they are going through? And so, some of the things that can help us are popular music, sports, just even, local culture things. So ask them, what's popular right now? What songs are, you find all sorts of stuff that you can use as illustrations that your audience knows. They might be listening to, who's popular right now? I don't even know. I live in a bubble. Sam Smith. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, all that. I know who Sam Smith is.
Yeah.
Yeah. One Direction. They're pretty big right now.
My cousins love One Direction.
There's a bunch of, pop artists that they probably know all the words to. They don't know what the words mean in English, but they might know all the words. So yeah, getting to know your translator can really help. In Cambodia, I changed the story one time because instead of talking about dogs, I talked about chickens. Because in Cambodia, they don't have dogs that run around. There's no stray dogs as much as there are stray chickens. They're everywhere. I changed the story in Taiwan to include stinky tofu, which is like fermented bean curd that is maybe the least awesome thing in the world. But it was something that they identified with. And so the audience is all like, yeah, stinky tofu. And I'm like, stinky tofu. But it's just getting to know your translator. You find out what's popular, what's not. Another thing that can help is, number 2, is get to know the local language. And so it can open all sorts of doors of relationship. Just having a little bit, a couple of words. Yeah, the guy who was translating for us here, this is in Burma. This is the first outreach that I led. And this guy just wanted to bless us. Take us out on a place called Inlay Lake. And it's beautiful. And we got this whole day sort of seeing around and enjoying Burma. And I think in large part because we connected with our translator. Because he said, hey, this isn't just another team that wants to do their thing, but I feel like they want to know about Burma. So I'm going to show them what Burma's like. And then we got this super cool day out. So, number 3, your translator is a teacher. And so when your translator is teaching, they're doing exactly that. They're teaching. They're not simply a translator. You are tag team teaching with someone. Whether they're a good teacher or a bad teacher, they are a teacher. You are teaching, they are teaching. And so it's important that you treat them as a teacher and not as anything less. And it's important that you get your audience to treat them as a teacher and not as anything less. So if somebody prays for you at the start of class, get them to pray for your translator too. If somebody brings you a glass of water and a snack at the break, get them to bring a glass of water and a snack for your translator. If they don't bring them something, share what you have with them. They are a teacher too. And so honor them as a teacher. And remember that for yourself, remember to pray that the Holy Spirit would speak through you and through your translator. If you're praying, God, I pray that you would speak to this audience. Be praying, God, I pray you would use my translator to clearly communicate. To speak, through, they are a teacher too. I was really challenged in Taiwan when I was doing my SBS how much they honored the translator. It's we're honoring the teacher today, but we really honor the translator. Look at the job that they have to do. And the lady that we had translating, even just last week, Nash was here from Taiwan, and I talked with him about the lady that was translating in our SBS, and he still is like, oh, she's the best. There's no one as good as Agnes. Every obscure name in the Bible, every obscure word that no one else knows, she knew. Just was an incredibly professional teacher as a translator. And so yeah, honor your translator as a teacher. Number 4, give your translator a copy of your teaching so that they can work through it. And so if they understand it for themselves, they're going to be more effective at translation when you're up the front teaching. They understand, okay, I know what's coming next. I can anticipate where we're going in this. And so I had a teammate when we were with the teaching team in Taiwan. Her name was Sandy, and she translated one of the teachings that I did. And I had an illustration about a star called Antara. And it was a pretty precise illustration to do with the size of the universe, the size of the earth, the size of the sun, the size, you get up to this big star called Antara. And she came to me and she said, what is this word? I don't understand it. And I said, well, it's the name of the star. And she was like, wow, thank you so much. And I thought it was this, I looked in the dictionary, I just couldn't find this unusual English word. She thought it was maybe a slang word, or she didn't understand, but it mattered for the illustration. It was to do with the nature and character of God. It was a big piece of illustrating how big God is. But she needed to know, okay, that's the name of the star. Another guy in Cambodia named Chinun who spent, I gave him my teaching, we were teaching tomorrow, and he sat and, read through every single word. He had his Khmer English dictionary out, and he was looking at every word, understanding. He was up till probably 10:30 or 11, just reading my notes and making sure that he knew I know where we're going to go tomorrow. And I felt so honored as a teacher that he cared so much for the students that we were teaching, that he spent all this time to make sure that he knew what was going on. But if I hadn't given him my notes, it would have been sort of, hey, let's just wing it tomorrow. And that's where you get a lot of the, wait, excuse me, what? Sort of questions from your translator. So you're teaching, and then suddenly it's like, wait, I don't understand. Explain to me. Which becomes frustrating. So help yourself by giving your translator a copy of your teaching. Okay, number 5, explain difficult words. So if you have difficult words, harder to understand words, explain them to your translator. Where possible, avoid colloquialisms and slang, and especially in YWAM, avoid YWAMese words and avoid Christianese words. Some words are very specific to the Christian language, but they don't translate very well. So I was teaching in Cambodia one time, and I used the word oh, it was so bad. Meaning, it was so good, it was so cool, it was so bad. And it got translated as, it's evil. Bad became, it was evil. And thankfully, I had a friend there who spoke great English and caught it, and Khmer, and said, oh, they just translated that as evil. Let me explain really quick. It was a lesson for me. I can just end up using a bunch of slang and colloquialisms that then become confusing for a translator. So number 5, explain difficult words.
What's the difference between an idiom and a colloquialism? What's a colloquialism?
And a colloquialism is something that we use all the time.
Okay.
And an idiom is more a word that replaces another word.
Okay.
Or would mean,
Figure of speech.
yeah, we use so many things. The English language is so broad. And we have all of these rules in the English language, and then we break all of them. And we all, you ask why, and you go, because that's just the way it is. We know that it sounds right. So it's so important that we take time to say, okay, what sort of language is in my teaching? What am I using? And does my translator know what I'm going to teach?
A colloquialism is a word or phrase that is used mostly in informal speech, a colloquial expression. So it's a local or regional dialect expression. So it's bad.
Yeah.
It's sick.
Okay, so here's one for Heather and I. I call the countertop in the kitchen. In New Zealand, the countertop in the kitchen is the bench. So I say, okay, just put it on the bench. And she looks at me and goes, where? It's an English word that in the United States means like a park bench. Like we're gonna go sit in the park and, you know, sit on a park bench and watch the ducks. In New Zealand, it means it's the countertop in the kitchen. Yeah, just do it on the bench. You know, where should I cut this? Cut it up on the bench. It's even in English, there's translation.
Yeah.
We use different words.